It started with a gut feeling it always doesn't it? Some imperceptible shift in tone and unusual softness in her voice. When she'd say I'll be out for lunch with a friend, the kind of softness you only notice if you've heard the sharp edges before, the ones you thought you had dulled over years of devotion. Laura and I had been married for 8 years, 8 years of morning coffees, whispered dreams, and the silent understanding that comes from knowing someone so completely. I thought we were solid. Sure, we had our disagreements, but who didn't? I choked it up to the natural wear and tear of life. That was before the late night text I accidentally saw while her phone rested on the couch beside me. Can't stop thinking about today. The message was from a number I didn't recognize. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off with a nervous laugh. It's nothing, just a group chat. You know how girls can be. I nodded but didn't press further. That night, lying in bed beside her staring at the ceiling, I knew something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. It wasn't until weeks later, when her lunch dates became more frequent and her excuses vaguer, that I decided to act. I'm not proud of it, but I went through her phone when she left it unattended one afternoon. The texts I found weren't suggestive, they were explicit. Her friend was someone named Eric, and judging by their exchanges, the lunch dates were far more than a quick sandwich and small talk. I felt a rush of nausea and anger, followed by a crushing wave of humiliation. My wife, my Laura, was having an affair, and it wasn't just a fling. These weren't messages of mere physical attraction, they were dripping with emotional intimacy, the kind of connection we used to have, the kind I thought was still ours. For a week I carried the knowledge in silence, trying to figure out what to do: confront her, pack my bags, and leave, beg her to explain. I did none of those things. Instead, I did something I've never done in my life. I plotted carefully, methodically. I planned. It started with research through a few social media rabbit holes. I discovered Eric was a colleague of hers, a sales representative for some company she'd collaborated with on a project. He was married to, I found, his wife Christine on Facebook, a petite brunette with kind eyes and 2 kids under 5. My heart broke for her, but my sympathy didn't deter me from moving forward. The plan came together faster than I expected. First, I hired a private investigator, a grizzled guy named Frank, who had a face like a bulldog and a no-nonsense attitude. Frank's photos confirmed everything: pictures of them leaving a hotel together, arms brushing, faces lit up with laughter. He'd even captured a shot of them kissing in her car. Proof, hard, undeniable proof. Next, I reached out to Christine. My message was simple: hi Christine, this is going to be hard to hear, but I believe your husband Eric is having an affair with my wife Laura. I've attached photos. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this. Her response came an hour later. It was a single sentence: thank you for telling me. The ball was rolling now, and I was no longer in control of where it would stop. But I had one last card to play. I wanted Laura to see what her betrayal had wrought, to feel the weight of her choices, so I invited her to lunch. Let's have a date, I said, forcing a smile. Just the 2 of us. We have done that in a while. She seemed relieved, almost eager. Perhaps she thought my sudden attentiveness was a sign I suspected. Nothing. Little did she know it was the calm before the storm. The day of the lunch arrived. I set the table meticulously, a crisp white tablecloth, our finest silverware, and 2 glasses of wine. On the surface it looked like an attempt at rekindling romance. In reality, it was a stage. In the centerpiece wasn't flowers, but a manila envelope filled with every damning piece of evidence Frank had gathered. Laura walked in smiling, her cheeks flushed from her supposed lunch date. She stopped cold when she saw the table. Her eyes darted from the envelope to me. What's this? She asked, her voice shaky. I didn't answer. I just gestured for her to sit. Reluctantly she did, her smile now a shadow of what it had been moments before. I slid the envelope across the table. Open it, I said. She hesitated, then complied. Her jaw tightened as she sifted through the photos and printouts of text messages. I can explain, she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Explain? I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm but razor sharp. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months, that you've been sneaking around with a married man, that you've been treating our marriage like it's disposable. Tears welled in her eyes. It's not like that, she whispered. Then what is it like, Laura? I demanded, my voice rising, because from where I'm sitting it looks like you've Then having your cake and eating it too. She broke down sobbing, mumbling apologies that meant nothing. I let her cry, let her wallow in the mess she'd created. When she finally looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, I dropped the next bombshell. I've spoken to Christine, I said. Her eyes widened in horror. You, what? She knows everything just like I do. You've destroyed not one but two families. Laura, congratulations. At that moment there was a knock at the door. Laura's head whipped around, her expression a mix of fear and confusion. I stood and opened it to reveal Christine. She stepped inside, her face calm but her eyes blazing with anger, and behind her, Eric. Laura's face went pale. What is this? She whispered. This, I said, is closure. The confrontation that followed was ugly. Christine unleashed years of pent-up frustration on Eric, who stood there, stammering like a fool. Laura tried to intervene, but Christine turned on her with the ferocity of Elise. Don't you dare try to justify this, she sneered. You're a selfish, deceitful. The words she used aren't fit for polite company. Eric finally tried to defend himself, spouting some nonsense about feeling unappreciated at home. I cut him off. Unappreciated, I laughed bitterly. You've got two beautiful kids and a wife who'd move heaven and earth for you, and this is how you repay her by the end of it. Everyone's emotions were frayed. Laura and Eric looked like broken shells of the people they were when they walked in. Christine and I exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement that we'd both emerged stronger. The fallout was swift. Laura packed her bags and moved out that evening. I filed for divorce the next day. Christine did the same. Eric lost his job when Christine sent their employer copies of the evidence. Laura's reputation took a nosedive as word of the affair spread among our friends and family. They had no one to blame but themselves. As for me, I won't pretend it was easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep. Mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, but with time, the anger faded, replaced by a quiet determination to rebuild my life. I started therapy, took up running, and reconnected with old friends. A year later, I'm happier than I've been in years. I've learned to value myself, to demand honesty and respect from the people in my life. Laura and Eric, last I heard, their relationship didn't survive the weight of the guilt. Revenge may not be the healthiest of motivations, but sometimes it's the catalyst we need to reclaim our power and reclaim it. I did.